10ਵੇਂ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਚੰਡੀ ਦੀ ਵਾਰ 'ਚ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਚਾਰੇ ਯੁੱਗ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਚੱਲਗ ਤੇਗ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਜਿੰਨੀ ਵੀ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੀ ਆ ਇਸ ਸੰਸਾਰ ਦੀ ਆ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਦੀ ਹੋਣੀ ਆ the story is going to be about the teg, about the talwar, about the sword.
ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਖੰਡਾ ਪ੍ਰਥਮੇ ਸਾਜ
ਖੰਡਾ ਪ੍ਰਥਮੇ ਸਾਜ ਕੇ he takes out his kirpan, what we call today the Taksali kirpan, right? He's like ek kar ya.
Acha.
And I said Baba ji ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨੇ ਕੇਲਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਵੱਢਣਾ.
Ultimately what Maharaj said to us is that we should as Singhs, as Sikhs, be the perfect balance,
yes,
Sant te sipahi.
Even at that time, like if we talk about like cannons at the time, we were much more advanced. That's why the Angrez would send over people to study in Lahore. ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ ਆਈਲੈਟਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ ਉਦੋਂ ਲਾਹੌਰ ਦਾ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਸੰਗਤਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਫੇਰ ਖੁੱਲੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਤੇ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ. ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਐਕਸਪਰਟ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਵਿਦਿਆ ਦੇ ਜਸਕਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ from Akali Armory. He has extensive knowledge in shastras, astars as well, different types of weapons, and ultimately the science of weaponry. ਤੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੀ. ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ. ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. So let's begin. Where did you first get into shastras? Because if I may, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, right? They're ultimately not the mainstream, but ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਆ, we usually see ਤਲਵਾਰਾਂ, shastras, things like that from the get-go as soon as we're born. ਸਾਡੀ like ਕੰਧਾਂ ਤੇ ਤਲਵਾਰਾਂ ਟੰਗੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ. We go into the ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ, ਅਸੀਂ ਮੱਥਾ ਟੇਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੂੰ ਮੱਥਾ ਟੇਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਪਰ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ ਪਏ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ. ਜੀ. Right? So ultimately we have the influence of these shastras from childhood. So where did yours begin?
ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ 7-8 ਸਾਲ ਪੁਰਾਣੀ ਗੱਲ ਆ. ਉਦੋਂ I started to learn ਗੱਤਕਾ. I'm so glad I did, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਭੰਗੜਾ ਪਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਚੋਂ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੇ ਚਾਹਿਆ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਹੁਣ ਸ਼ਸਤਰਾਂ ਲਈ ਨੱਚਿਆ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਹਨਾ. ਤੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਸੁਭਾਗ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਹੋਇਆ, ਉਹ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਸੀ ਵੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਦਿਨ 2 ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਲਿਆਂਦੇ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਮਿਆਨ ਬਣਾਉਣੇ ਆ. ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਹਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਮਿਆਨ ਕੋਈ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ. ਨਾ ਹੀ
ਮਿਆਨ ਮੀਨਿੰਗ ਕਵਰ,
ਉਹਨੂੰ ਆਪਾਂ ਸਕੈਬਰਡ ਬੁਲਾ ਲਈਏ, ਮਿਆਨ ਬੁਲਾ ਲਈਏ, ਹਨਾ. ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਮਿਆਨ ਹਜੇ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਬਾਬਾ ਜੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਵੀ ਤੂੰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਤਿਆਰ ਕਰ, ਹਨਾ. ਤੇ ਹਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਮੈਂ ਕਦੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਤਿਆਰ. ਤੇ
ਸੇਵਾ ਮਿਲ ਗਈ,
ਪਰ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਵੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਮਿਲ ਗਈ ਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਬਣਾਉਣਾ ਆ, ਹਨਾ. ਤੇ ਉਦੋਂ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਕਾਰਡਬੋਰਡ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਬਣਾਇਆ, ਡਕ ਟੇਪ ਕਰਕੇ ਬਣਾ ਕੇ ਵੀ ਘੱਟੋ ਘੱਟ ਇਹਦਾ ਕਵਰ ਬਣ ਜੇ, ਹਨਾ. ਤੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਵਾਪਸ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਉਸਤਾਦ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਦਿਖਾਇਆ ਵੀ ਦੇਖੋ ਵੀ ਤਿਆਰ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਤੇ ਕੱਪੜਾ ਵੀ ਚੜਾਤਾ, ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੁਣ ਤੂੰ ਰੱਖ ਲੈ, ਤੇਰੀਆਂ ਆ. ਤੇ ਉਹ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ 'ਚ ਕੁਦਰਤੀ ਬਸ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੀ ਪੈ ਗਿਆ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਸੀ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਤਕਾ ਸਿੱਖਦੇ ਵੀ ਤਾਂ ਆ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁਰਾਤਨ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਜਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਮ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਵਰਤਣੇ ਆਉਣੇ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ, ਹਨਾ. ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਸਿੱਖਦੇ ਆ. ਸੋਟੀ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਉੱਦਾਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਪ ਆ, ਰਾਈਟ. ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਸੇਫਟੀ ਲਈ ਆ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਸੋਟੀ ਵਰਤਦੇ ਆ. ਜੇ ਜੰਗ ਹੋਊਗੀ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਵਰਤਾਂਗੇ.
ਨਹੀਂ, ਪਰ ਸੋਟੀ ਵੀ ਜੇ ਵਰਤਣੀ ਹੋਵੇ ਤਾਂ ਸੱਟ ਪੈਂਦੀ ਹੈ.
ਹਾਂ, ਜੇ ਵਰਤਣੀ ਹੋਏ ਤਾਂ ਕੰਨ ਪੱਟੀ ਦਾ ਵਾਰ ਲੱਗੇ ਬੰਦਾ ਬੇਹੋਸ਼ ਹੋ ਜਾਊਗਾ.
ਸਹੀ ਗੱਲ,
ਉਹ ਬਸ ਵਰਤਣੀ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਆ. ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਸਹੀ ਆ. ਤੇ ਜਦੋਂ 2 ਮਤਲਬ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਪਿਆਰ ਪੈ ਗਿਆ, ਸਹਿਜੇ ਜੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਵੀ ਹਾਂ ਹੁਣ ਇਹਦੀ ਧਾਰ ਵੀ ਤੇਜ਼ ਕਰੀਏ, ਤਿੱਖੀ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੈ ਵੀ ਤਿੱਖੀ ਕਰਨੀ ਵੀ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਵਰਤੀ ਜਾਊਗੀ ਜੇ ਤਿੱਖੀ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ.
ਤਲਵਾਰ ਤਿੱਖੀ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਕੀ ਉਹਦਾ,
ਤੇ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਕੀ ਆ. ਹਾਂਜੀ. ਤੇ ਉਹ ਉੱਦਾਂ ਕਰਦਿਆਂ ਤੇ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਹੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਪਿਆਰ ਪੈ ਗਿਆ ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਸਹਿਜੇ ਚਿੱਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਵੀ ਹੁਣ ਹੋਰ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਲਈਏ. ਤੇ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੇ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਕੀਤੀ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਚਿੱਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਉਵੇਂ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਆਈ ਗਏ. ਇੰਨਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਇਹ ਬਸ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਜਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਭ ਹੀ ਲੈਂਦਾ ਆ, ਹਨਾ. ਉਹ ਮੇਰੇ ਵੱਸ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਲੈਣੀ ਜਾਂ ਕਿਹੜਾ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਲੈਣਾ. ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਬਸ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਵੀ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਜਾਣਾ. ਸ੍ਰੀ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਸੇਵਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਲੈ ਲੈਂਦੀ ਹੈ.
For example, in Harry Potter, they say the wand chooses the wizard, right?
Exactly.
Similarly, the Shastra chooses the Saint.
Exactly. ਇਹਨਾਂ 'ਚ ਇੱਕ ਮਹਾਨ ਚੀਜ਼ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੁਰਾਤਨ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਸਨ. ਜਦ ਆਪਾਂ ਮੁੱਕ ਵੀ ਜਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਹੋਣਾ ਆ, ਇਹ ਰਹਿਣਗੇ, ਹਨਾ. ਹੁਣ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ 10ਵੇਂ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਚੰਡੀ ਦੀ ਵਾਰ 'ਚ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਚਾਰੇ ਯੁੱਗ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਚੱਲਗ ਤੇਗ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਜਿੰਨੀ ਵੀ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੀ ਆ, ਇਸ ਸੰਸਾਰ ਦੀ ਆ, ਸਟੋਰੀ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਦੀ ਹੋਣੀ ਆ. the story is going to be about the teg, about the talwar, about the sword.
ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਖੰਡਾ ਪ੍ਰਥਮੇ ਸਾਜ ਕੇ. ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ ਦੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ ਤੋਂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ.
ਹਾਂਜੀ.
So were you ever put in a position where you had to use these shastras?
There's been times when I thought I would had to, ਪਰ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੈ, ਇਹਨੂੰ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਹੀ ਕਈ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਟਲ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ ਹਨਾ। ਹੁਣ ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੋਕ ਪੁੱਛਦੇ ਆ ਵੀ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਬਾਹਰਲੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀਆਂ ਦੇ, ਕਦੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵੀ ਪੁੱਛ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਕਿਉਂ ਪਾਈ ਹੈ ਹਨਾ, ਪਰ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਬਾਹਰਲੇ ਪੁੱਛਦੇ ਆ ਵੀ why are you wearing a dagger, right,
why do you have a weapon on you,
90% of us ਜਿਹੜੇ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤਧਾਰੀ ਵੀ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਕਹਿਣਗੇ ਵੀ this is an article of faith,
it's part of my religion,
it's a part of my religion,
I have to wear it.
ਪਰ ਉੱਥੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਵੀ ਦੇਖੋ ਇਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸੇਫਟੀ ਤੇ ਮੇਰੀ ਸੇਫਟੀ ਲਈ ਆ,
ਡਿਫੈਂਸ ਲਈ ਆ, ਇਹ
ਡਿਫੈਂਸ ਲਈ ਆ ਤੇ ਇਟਸ ਫॉर ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਕਸ਼ਨ। ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਹੋਰ ਦੀ ਮਦਦ ਨਾ ਕਰਾਂ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਮਦਦ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਉੱਥੇ ਮੇਰੀ ਗਲਤੀ ਆ।
ਇਹ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੇ ਮਤਲਬ it's against ਸਿੱਖੀ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਇਹ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੇ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਆ, ਬਖਸ਼ੀ ਤਾਂ ਆ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਪੂਰੇ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਵੀ ਸੰਸਾਰ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਨੀਲੀ ਛੱਤ ਵਾਂਗੂ ਆਪਾਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਕਟ ਕਰ ਸਕੀਏ। ਹਾਂਜੀ
ਸੋ ਇੱਕ ਤਾਂ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ ਸਾਡੇ, ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਪੁਰਾਤਨ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ,
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਪੁਰਾਤਨ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ।
So could you explain the differences between these? Because I mean there's a lot of, I guess you could say, ਦੁਕਾਨਾਂ ਹੁਣ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਨਗਰ ਕੀਰਤਨ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਮਿਲਣ ਲੱਗੀਆਂ। They sell either ridiculous prices,
right,
or it's complete, ਕਹਿਣਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ, ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ ਹੈਗਾ, ਪਰ I myself have been scammed once, right? ਮੈਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਲਈ ਸੀਗੀ ਨਗਰ ਕੀਰਤਨ ਤੇ ਲਈ ਸੀਗੀ, ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ $50 ਦੀ ਸੀਗੀ, and it was so, ਮਤਲਬ ਮੈਂ ਫੜੀ ਸੀਗੀ and there was a rock shaking in it. I don't know where there's a space in a kirpan to have a rock shaking, maybe in the mutta or something, but ਏਦਾਂ ਖੜਕਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੀ, right? The shastra is not supposed to be like that.
ਉਹ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਹੋਊਗਾ ਅਸਲ 'ਚ। I'll start off with why it was making that sound. ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾ ਲਾਖ ਪਾਈ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਆ। ਲਾਖ is made out of tree glue, ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਰੇਤਾ ਮਿਕਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਗੂੰਦ ਬਣਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੁੱਠੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾਈਦੀ ਆ। ਉਹ ਮੁੱਠੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਹੀਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਆਪਾਂ ਬਲੇਡ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾਈਦੀ ਆ।
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ।
ਜਿਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਸੈਟਲ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਆ ਲਾਖ ਉਹਦੀ, ਤੇ ਉਦਾਂ ਹੀ ਬਲੇਡ ਵਿੱਚ ਫਿਕਸ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ।
ਮਤਲਬ ਸੀਮੈਂਟ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਇੱਕ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ, ਇੱਕ
ਕਿਸਮ ਦਾ ਸੀਮੈਂਟ ਆ, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਮਤਲਬ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਪਿਘਲਾ ਕੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਬਦਲ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ, ਰਾਈਟ, ਤੇ ਓਵਰ ਟਾਈਮ ਉਹ ਵੀਕ ਵੀ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਆ। ਤੇ ਦ ਮੇਨ ਥਿੰਗ ਇਜ਼ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਸ਼ੇਕ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੋਊਗੀ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਹੀ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਲਾਖ ਨਹੀਂ ਲਾਈ ਹੋਊਗੀ। ਤੇ ਬਾਅਦ 'ਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਕੈਮ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਆ, ਆਮ ਗੱਲ ਇਹ ਆ ਵੀ ਕਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੇਚਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਪਤਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੇਚ ਕੀ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ। ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਕਨਸੈਪਟ ਵੇਚ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਮਿਆਨ 'ਚ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਆ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਨਗਰ ਕੀਰਤਨ 'ਚ ਫੜੋ, ਫੋਟੋਆਂ ਖਿੱਚੋ।
Because the kirpan ultimately is like a message itself, right?
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
and whoever's holding it is clearly sending a message.
ਜੀ। ਤੇ ਮੇਨ ਗੱਲ ਦੇਖੋ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੁਰਾਤਨ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਪਰਖ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ, ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਪੁਰਾਤਨ ਆ, ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ। ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਵੀ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਲੋਹੇ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਸਨ, ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਫੌਲਾਦ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ, ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ we can call it woots or
so what, if I may, what are the different blades? Because there's like 4 or 5 ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਆ। ਸਕੇਲਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ, ਫੌਲਾਦ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਸਕੇਲਾ is it has different metals within it, and those vary depending on the piece. But Sakela is the term used today would be pattern welded Damascus.
Okay. So it's a mixture of different metals, or just a metal that has different properties?
No, it would be different metals combined together to have a different composition.
Okay.
They ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ basically they're welded within a pattern, and then it'll get twisted, then it'll get beat down, right?
And then the design of that,
and then that design, basically the properties of that metal, once we put an acid over it to expose it, it'll show a pattern.
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ, ਮਤਲਬ ਉੱਥੇ ਫਿਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੋਲੂਸ਼ਨ ਪਾਉਂਦੇ ਆ ਉਹ
that pattern itself will show the authenticity of the shastar itself. So a seasoned collector or a seasoned shastar dealer will be able to tell right off the first look, via falad or is it sakela, or is it neither?
ਫਲਾਦ ਤੇ ਸਕੇਲਾ 'ਚ ਕੀ ਫਰਕ ਹੈ?
ਜੇ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਸੌਖੇ ਤਰੀਕੇ 'ਚ ਕਹਾਂ, it's like ਮਟਰ ਪਨੀਰ ਤੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਭੁਰਜੀ।
ਅੱਛਾ, ਠੀਕ
ਹੈ। ਜਿਹੜੀ ਭੁਰਜੀ ਉਹ ਸਟੈਕਡ ਹੋਈ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ ਹਨਾ, ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਪੈਟਰਨ ਵੋਰਡ ਸਕੇਲਾ, ਠੀਕ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮਟਰ ਪਨੀਰ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਤਰਦੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ ਹਨਾ। ਏਦਾਂ ਹੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਫੌਲਾਦ ਦੇ ਜੋਰ ਤਰਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ, ਉਹ ਪਾਣੀ ਵਰਗੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ। ਤੇ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾਤਰ ਤਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵੈਲਿਊ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਮਾਰਕੀਟ 'ਚ ਆ ਵੂਟਸ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦੀ ਆ। Woots is much more expensive. The collectors would prefer to have a more aesthetic blade. The pattern of Woots is more aesthetically pleasing.
So ek Woots ho gaya, ek Skela ho gaya, Fallad ho gaya. So what are the other main ones?
So Fallad and Woots is the same thing.
Okay.
ठीक है जी. Then Sakela and pattern wood is the same thing. The term Damascus changes. Damascus is sometimes referred to Woots or Fallad. And other times it's referred to pattern wood or sakela. That just depends on how these terms were passed down.
ਅੱਛਾ
Even museums, they might call something Damascus and it might be pattern welded, whereas another museum might refer to something as Damascus and it'll be Woots.
ਅੱਛਾ ਮਤਲਬ the ਲੋਹਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹਨੂੰ the different ways of defining it, I guess they vary.
ਹਾਂਜੀ they vary a lot. ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀਆਂ 'ਚ ਆ ਜਾਈਏ, ਆਪਣੇ ਦਲ ਪੰਥਾਂ 'ਚ ਆ ਜਾਈਏ ਜਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਜਥੇਬੰਦੀਆਂ 'ਚ ਆ ਜਾਈਏ ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵੇਰੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ। ਅਤੇ ਕਦੇ ਕਦਾਏ ਕਈਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਊਗਾ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਫੌਲਾਦ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਵੂਟਸ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉੱਦਾਂ ਕਹਿ ਦੇਣਾ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਬਹੁਤ ਸੋਹਣਾ ਫੌਲਾਦ ਦਾ ਹੋਊਗਾ, ਹੈ ਨਾ, ਉੱਦਾਂ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ। ਅਤੇ ਇਹ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਵੀ ਦੈਟਸ ਅ ਲੈਕ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ, ਹੈ ਨਾ। ਜੇ
ਹੁਣ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੇਰੇ ਵਰਗਾ ਹੈਗਾ like that I don't know, I'm just gonna say there's one that looks I guess expensive or it looks better, be it ਮਤਲਬ expensive material ਦਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ, ਹਾਂਜੀ, but just because of it's expensive material it doesn't mean it's the right material, what's being told to me. ਜੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਵੀ ਇਹ Damascus ਹੈਗਾ and it has a water pattern on it, ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਸੋਚ I'm just gonna say yeah it is and I'm gonna buy it.
And you know Woots is still made today, but ਜਿਹੜਾ ਚੰਗਾ Woots ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਬਣਦਾ it's more expensive than ਪੁਰਾਤਨ Woots.
ਉਹ ਕਾਹਦੇ?
Because it's actually fresh.
ਅੱਛਾ,
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ।
Fresh meaning
as in, so after the 18th century up about into the mid 19th century we lost the way to make Woots. The reason behind that is Europeans came over with spring steel and Singh started to prefer spring steel.
ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਹ spring steel ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ
ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਹੈ, spring steel ਵੀ ਹੈਗਾ, ਕਮਾਨੀ ਵੀ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ। ਤੇ
ਇਹ ਆਇਆ ਸੀਗਾ 1750s,
ਹਾਂਜੀ, around then ਤੇ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਅਪਣਾ ਕੇ we made it our own. What Singhs would do is they would capture spring steel blades off of gore, right, and they would put it in their own mutte.
ਅੱਛਾ,
so
ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਤਲਵਾਰਾਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਮਤਲਬ
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਕਬਜ਼ਾ ਕਰ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਸੀ। You'll find our mutte with European blades in it. ਅੱਛਾ, technically you would call it a Farangi, foreigner. Farangi ਤਲਵਾਰ ਅੱਛਾ, ਹਾਂਜੀ। Farangi technically just means that the blade is from outside of India, ਬਾਹਰ ਦੀ ਬੇਗਾਨੀ ਹੈ, ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹ ਹੋਊਗੀ ਯੂਰਪ ਦੀ, ਹਾਂਜੀ। ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਿੰਘ ਵਰਤਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ, do you think they did that just because it was a flex or was it because ਵੀ ਉਹਦੀ ਮੈਟਲ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਪਰਟੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵਧੀਆ ਸੀ? It was actually stronger. It held up better than Woots. That's kind of the reason why we lost the way to make Woots, because we didn't need to anymore. We preferred a different steel by that time.
Yeah. So is it possible that we obviously ਹੁਣ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤਲਵਾਰ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, there's many different uses for it as well, right? ਜੀ, ਸਿਰਫ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਵੀ you're just gonna like attack something or something, right? Practice, ਅਸੀਂ ਹੁਣ practice ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਵਿੱਦਿਆ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਹਾਂਜੀ, that's an essential part of using the weapon itself, right? So is it true that there's different metals that are better for different uses?
I would say so. Like ਇੱਕ ਪੁਰਾਣੀ ਕਹਾਵਤ ਆ, ਫਿਰੇ ਅਕੇਲਾ ਹੱਥ 'ਚ ਸਕੇਲਾ, ਵੀ ਫਿਰਦਾ ਇਕੱਲਾ ਤੇ ਹੱਥ 'ਚ ਸਕੇਲਾ, ਵੀ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਪਰਵਾਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ। So even though collectors prefer Woots, fighters at the time preferred Sakela. Sakela it might even be cheaper on the market today. Achha. And Woots would be generally more expensive
because it's more rare.
Because no, I wouldn't say it's more rare. But I would say that it's more aesthetically pleasing, and because of that, people buy it more and they hold on to it more. Personally, I prefer Sakela. Sakela holds up a better edge. I believe it has better fighting qualities to it. It's meant more for business, whereas Woots was more like a one kill and done.
ਅੱਛਾ, ਤਲਵਾਰਾਂ ਟੁੱਟ ਵੀ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ ਨਾ,
ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦੀਆਂ ਤਲਵਾਰਾਂ ਆਮ ਟੁੱਟ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਰਿਪੇਅਰ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਸੀ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਸੋਚੀਏ ਵੀ ਹੁਣ ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਵੀ ਕਹੋ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਅਸਤਰ ਖਰੀਦਣੇ, ਕੋਈ ਆਪਾਂ ਗਨ ਖਰੀਦਣੀ ਆ, ਹੈ ਨਾ,
ਗਲੋਕ ਲੈ ਲਈਏ,
ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਗਲੋਕ ਲੈ ਲਈ, ਹੈ ਨਾ, ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਹੋ ਵੀ ਗਲੋਕ ਸਟਰੀਟ ਤੋਂ ਲਵਾਂਗੇ, the chances of that jamming are much higher than buying it from a gun store.
Yeah. Right? Like if you buy a P80 versus a Glock.
Right? So similarly at that time, ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਪਿੰਡ ਦੇ ਸਿਕਲੀਗਰ ਤੋਂ ਫੌਲਾਦ ਬਣਵਾਈ ਆ, it might not be as good as for someone who's working for a Raja at that time.
Just because of the resources and things they have.
Just because of the resources.
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ।
ਤੇ ਉਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਮਾਰਕੀਟ ਬਹੁਤ ਤਗੜਾ ਸੀ, as far as there was a big variation between low-end Woots, high-end Woots, low-end Sakela, high-end Sakela.
Yeah. Right. So like you said, there's like, for example, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਿੰਡਾਂ 'ਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਲੀਗਰ ਸੀਗੇ, ਉਹ ਬਣਾਉਂਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ, and then there was also people for the Rajas, I guess, like the blacksmiths, the people that had all the expensive tools and everything. So ਜਿਵੇਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਵੀ ਦੇਸੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਵਧੀਆ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ ਵਰਸਸ ਬਾਹਰ ਦੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨਾਲੋਂ ਜਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮਸ਼ੀਨ ਨਾਲ ਬਣੀ ਹੈ
ਜੀ
ultimately ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ ਹੈਗਾ it all depends on the craftsmanship.
It depends on the craftsmanship.
Correct?
100% agreed right there.
So are there instances where like the Raja or the I guess you could say the expensive one is not as good as the one that's made by the Sikh League in the Pind?
It could, so yes. So the one that the Raja is going to wear, let's say it's Maharaja Ranjit Singh's talwar, right?
Mm-hmm.
It might be meant as a darbari piece.
Yeah.
He's only going to wear it in his darbar.
Yeah.
It has gold on the hilt,
Mm-hmm.
right? It has nice woots on the blade. That might not be the one that he takes to war.
Of course, yeah. ਨਹੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਤਾਂ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਸਾਡਾ like a collector's item, right?
ਹਾਂਜੀ।
ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੁਣ ਜੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੈਗੀ I have a kati, right?
ਜੀ।
I don't use it,
Right.
but any like occasion I go to, that's my ਵਧੀਆ piece.
That's your go-to holding
It's a
piece.
showpiece,
Right. Right.
Not to say I can't use it,
ਹਾਂਜੀ।
but it is a showpiece, right?
Right.
But ਇੱਕ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਜੇ ਮੈਂ like ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ like ਮੈਂ ਜੰਗ 'ਚ ਜਾਣਾ, my loadout, what is my loadout? What am I going to take? ਜਿਹੜਾ general ਹੈਗਾ,
ਹਾਂਜੀ।
he's going to be leading his army.
Right.
He ultimately needs the best of the best piece.
I would say, from what I've seen in the Pratan fighting quality blades, they've mostly been Sakela.
Okay.
Mostly Sakela.
And that's a metal used by
That's
everyone?
Everyone used it. That Sakela was used in India. It was used in throughout all the way
ਤੇ
through
ਰਾਜੇ
the
ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ
Persian
ਪਿੰਡਾਂ ਤੱਕ ਸਾਰੇ ਵਰਤਦੇ ਸੀ।
subcontinent. They what's it called? It was even it even made its way to Europe.
ਅੱਛਾ।
Yeah.
So ਉਹੀ ਅਭੀ ਰਾਜੇ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਪਿੰਡਾਂ ਤੱਕ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਵਰਤਿਆ।
ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਕੋਲ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੀ। ਗੱਲ ਇਦਾਂ ਸੀ ਦੇਖੋ ਆਪਣੇ ਲਈ ਤਾਂ ਕਕਾਰ ਆ, right? But if we go 200 years back, everyone had a karpan.
Of course.
We didn't have Glocks back then.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't have an AK-47 200 years ago, right? ਉਦੋਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਲਈ the tool for safety was a talwar. Or a tega, or we can go into the variations later.
Yeah.
But as in like the tool for protection was the sword. It's basically today's everyday carry.
Of course, yeah. So ਕਹਿਣ ਦਾ ਭਾਵ ਇਹ ਅਭੀ is there I guess what I'm trying to say is there a specific type of metal that was only used by like hierarchy, someone who had the I guess like the nobility or the richness to afford it?
Woots was mostly in the upper class. Hanji. And even then someone not in the upper class might have woots, but it wouldn't be as nice as the elite that would have the woots.
Yeah. ठीक है।
So there's a lot of variation in between the same metal too. There can be weak woots, there can be really strong woots. That just varies on how much was spent on that.
Yeah. So we know in Pratan times there was different variations, different metals, things like that. But there was also variations in the shastra itself. There's not just a talwar. There's also a kati. There's also a golia. Right? I don't know too many of the names, but I'm sure you could shed some light on that.
So, I mean, I say like let's dig down into what the shastra was for us as Sikhs, right? ਜਦੋਂ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤ ਛਕਾਇਆ, they gave us a license to hold a weapon.
Yeah.
Which is very special. It's like having an everyday carry over here, having a concealed carry, but we didn't have to conceal it.
Yeah.
Right? We could wear it out. At that time, the kakar was the 3 ਫੁੱਟੀ ਤਲਵਾਰ. ਅੱਜ ਤਾਂ kakar ਬਹੁਤ ਇੱਕ ਵੱਖਰੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਆ.
Yeah.
ਅੱਜ ਦੇ kakar ਤਾਂ ਕਦੀ we can find them welded together.
Yeah.
So someone doesn't take it out, right? You can't even use it. But back then, the kakar was actually usable, and it was not only meant for pog.
Well, okay, so here's something I should mention, because this is a hot topic. People say, oh, weapons, it's bad. You shouldn't. Ultimately, it goes back to what are you using it for? If it's for defense, if it's for the right purposes, right, you shouldn't be scared. You shouldn't be afraid.
No.
Right? It's for your protection. It's for my protection. ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਅੱਜ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਸਾਹਿਬਾਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ, ਇਹਦੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਚਰਚਾ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਵੀ should it be 10 ਫੁੱਟੀ, should it be, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਪ੍ਰਾਤਨ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੱਕ 10 ਫੁੱਟੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ no one really wore like a 2-inch dagger.
No.
Right?
No. If they did, they'd hide it. As it's like a last resort use.
Yeah. Right? But it wasn't like ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਣ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲੀਆਂ like ਮੁੜੀਆਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਉੱਤੋਂ, like you can't even use it. ਹੁਣ ਜਿਹੜਾ I'll tell you a little story. My ਉਸਤਾਦ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀਗਾ, when he seen that ਮੈਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ normal ਇੱਕ ਟਕਸਾਲੀ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਪਾਈ ਹੋਈ ਸੀਗੀ, he took it out and he's like, ਦਿਖਾਈ ਮੈਨੂੰ, right? Took it out, give it to him. He straight up stabs me.
Yeah.
Straight up, right? And the blade just bent.
It just bent.
He's like, ਇਹਨੇ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਬਚਾਣਾ. And I'm like, damn. Like, like ਬਾਕੀ ਸਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ, right?
ਹਾਂਜੀ.
ਤੇ after that, I looked for like very specific, like a pesh kabz or a specific type of kirpan that at least if I need to use it, right? Hopefully I don't need to ever, right? But if I do, I have the correct tool. There's no point wearing the wrong tool. If you're going to wear it right, correct?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're better off not wearing it.
Exactly.
You're better off
if you're
not
going to
wearing
weld it together, you're going to sew it
Right.
together. That's because
You're better off just not wearing it.
not wearing it.
Yeah.
Right. फायदा की होता?
Right. That's
So-
like when someone asks us like I said before, it's not just an article of faith. It's for protection.
Yeah, it's a tool of defense.
It's a tool of defense, right? For me, this is a kakar over here too. It's a peshkabj.
So
This is more of a kakar than what we would find normally worn today.
exactly. So could you shed some light on what this is?
Yeah, so this is actually it could also be called kard. Some museums call it an Afghani kard, but personally, I like to name shastras based off of their use and their shape,
Yeah.
right? So this one specifically is called a peshkabj, in my opinion. On the hilt is is rhino horn,
Rhino horn. Acha.
which was expensive at the time, and that was the preferred material for battle weaponry.
Acha.
If it was a small dagger, instead of putting ivory on it, they would put rhino horn.
ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਆਈਵਰੀ ਦਿਖਦੀ ਹੈ, right? Like
Ajikal
it's-
ivory
it's like the
mildi
white handle.
Hanji, we either get camel bone today, or we'll get cattle bone, or we'll have ivory.
Acha.
Ivory is
ਹੱਡੀ
a
ਹੈ
bit more expensive. Like this one in front of us is ivory, but that's from the late 18th century. Today they use new ivory. There has been a recent ban on ivory,
Yeah, yeah.
which might be,
It's controversial, but
I mean, it's okay. I'm not against it.
Yeah.
It just brings in more value for the ivory pieces that are around, right? But at the time, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਵੀ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਿੰਘਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਕਾਰਾਂ ਲਈ ਹੋਲਡ ਕੀਤੇ ਸੀ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਅੱਜ ਤੱਕ ਵੀ ਦਲ ਪੰਥਾਂ ਦੇ ਖਜ਼ਾਨਿਆਂ 'ਚ ਪਏ ਨੇ,
ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਵੀ ਗਾਤਰੇ ਦੀ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਸੀ,
ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗਾਤਰੇ ਦੀ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਸੀ, they looked more like this and this versus what we see today.
Acha.
Hanji.
So and the reason for that is because of ultimately the use, right?
Yes.
This can be used, and obviously there's many different ways to use a knife, right?
Many ways.
ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅੱਜ ਕਿਰਪਾਨਾਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ, first of all, you're not going to train with that in a gatka class.
No.
This like a kard or something like this.
This has proper use to it.
Right? There's a technique to it as well, right?
Right.
And so one thing I've heard is that ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, the handle has to be the same as the blade. Otherwise, it doesn't count as a shiri sahib, or it doesn't count as your, because there's like issues of maryada and things like that.
Right.
So would you argue it's the maryada is more important, or the actual use of the shastra is more important?
Personally, I would argue before that. I feel like they're not anyone that believes that it has to be completely steel, of one piece steel. I don't think they know. I don't think they've studied shastra enough yet.
Yeah.
Or they haven't been taught that yet. Right?
ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਵੀ ਲੋਹਾ ਤਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਵੀ ਸਰਬਲੋ ਦਾ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ, right?
Hanji, so even sarblo, let's just dig into sarblo. Some might say sarblo is pure iron. But if
Cast iron, I think.
Cast iron, but if you use a cast iron blade on anything, it'll probably crack.
It's not a strong metal.
It's harder to temper. It's harder to put a temper on it versus falad or sakela. Those are tempered to a way where even if it hits metal, or even if it falls, let's say it falls straight into the ground, right?
ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਟੁੱਟ ਜਾਣਾ.
That one won't break. Falad and sakela won't break.
But sarblo,
Less chances. But sarblo, it can't hold its edge because it has a higher carbon
ਤੇ ਫਿਰ
content.
ਕਿਹਾ ਕੀ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਵੀ ਸਰਬਲੋ ਦੀ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਪਾਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ?
So this is, I mean, personally, it's a little controversial, but I think this came.
We like
once-
controversy, don't worry.
Oh, then it'll be fun. So, ਜਦੋਂ ਗੋਰੇ ਆਏ ਸੀ, right? ਜਦੋਂ ਗੋਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਰਾਜ ਆਇਆ, ਇੱਕ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੋਈ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੇਨ ਗੱਲ ਆ. Along with our ਕੀਰਤਨ changing a little bit,
ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਸੰਗੀਤ.
Gurbani Sangeet going into a different route, our Shastra changed.
Very much, very much.
Very much, right? Why? The Gore took our Shastra and sent them to different regimes.
Yeah.
They sent them out to Europe, into different
They
countries.
took the guns, pretty much.
The guns, the proper city sobs, they made their way into homes and grabbed all the city sobs they could.
Yeah.
That's happening today too.
ਮਤਲਬ ਪਾਬੰਦੀਆਂ ਲੱਗੀ ਸੀ.
ਬਹੁਤ ਪਾਬੰਦੀ ਲੱਗੀ ਸੀ. And then my belief is that they commissioned the new kakar.
They did.
They commissioned the new kakar.
ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅੱਜ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਵੀ ਟਕਸਾਲੀ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਉਹ ਤੋਂ ਮੁੜੀ ਹੋਈ ਆ, ਉਹ
ਹਾਂਜੀ।
ਗੋਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਮੋੜੀ ਆ.
ਗੋਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਮੋੜੀ।
ਉਹ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ, ਉਹ
100%।
ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ, there was never like that. The edge of it you could see is completely, ਮਤਲਬ ਨੋਕ ਜੀ ਬਣੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੀ.
ਨੋਕ ਬਣੀ ਆ।
Yeah, and that's not, ਗੋਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਬਣਾਈ ਆ ਉਹ.
ਨੋਕ ਜੇ ਹੋਈ ਵੀ ਨਾ, there can be a consistent curve on a blade and it'll be usable.
Yeah.
But the noke that's on the, let's say the Taksali Kirpan, sometimes I hate that it's aligned with the Jathebandi.
Yeah,
right?
of course, unfortunately.
But what we call the Taksali Kirpan today, the nok is there to literally to prevent use.
I mean, it seems like it because I
if
was
you look
stabbed
at
by
it
one and nothing
geometrically and
happened.
you look at it scientifically on the use of weaponry, it's literally there to prevent the use.
So before ਗੋਰਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਸਮੇਂ,
ਹਾਂਜੀ
right, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ ਸੀਗੇ ਇਦਾਂ ਦੇ ਲੱਗਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ.
ਹਾਂਜੀ
ਗੋਰੇ ਆਏ, they changed it, they made the mainstream ਕਿਰਪਾਨ we see today. If I
Right.
go into the store and I say ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ, they're going to sell me that simple curved one.
What's funny is I'll tell you, I just recently came back from Punjab. My thing was that I'm gonna go to all the shops that I see and ask for Puratan Karpana. When I asked for Puratan Karpana, they all showed me new Karpana.
Acha. New, and did they say they were Puratan?
They thought it was Puratan. I don't know if they were lying or they personally thought it was Puratan. Right? And then when I went deeper into nahi baba ji mainu falad di chahidi ਜਾਂ ਸਕੇਲੇ ਦੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਆ, then they'd be like, no, I don't have any of that. So even at the local level now in Punjab or where our biggest towns are, I'm talking around Sri Darbar Sahib where there's over 100 shops of Karpana.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And around Fatehgarh Sahib, around Anandpur Sahib. They don't know what Puratan Karpana are anymore. Either they don't know or they don't have access anymore.
Or purposely they're trying to like exploit it.
Personally, I was even offered Puratan Karpana and they were not up to par. I can find better pieces in America, in Europe, in Canada than I can in Punjab.
Wow.
And that's sad.
Yeah. Because ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੱਕ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਕੌਮ ਹੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਨਾ ਸਿੱਖ ਲੀਗਰਾਂ ਦੀ, and they were known as like the best blacksmiths and bladesmiths. And they're from the region of Patiala area, I believe as well, right? ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਜੇ ਤੂੰ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਵਧੀਆ ਲੈਣੀ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾ. So if I were to go there today, you're saying I would not find a...
You would have better luck if you went to some dalpans that have their own karigars. ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਬੁੱਢੇ ਦਲ ਦੀ ਫੈਕਟਰੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ.
ਇੱਕ ਸੁਰਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਵਿਧੀ ਚੰਦੀ.
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਜੀ ਖੰਡਾ ਆਇਆ ਸੀ ਉੱਥੋਂ ਬਣ ਕੇ, ਬਹੁਤ ਕਮਾਲ ਦਾ ਖੰਡਾ. ਇਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਜੋ ਇੱਕ ਸਿੰਘ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਘੁਮਾਉਂਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਕੋਲੋਂ ਥੱਲੇ ਲੱਗ ਗਿਆ, ਕੰਕਰੀਟ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਪਾੜ ਗਿਆ.
ਅੱਛਾ.
ਖੰਡੇ ਨੂੰ ਕੁਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਇਆ.
ਵਾਓ.
ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਸੋਹਣੇ ਨਵੇਂ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਬਣਦੇ ਆ, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਉਨੇ ਹੀ ਰੇਅਰ ਨੇ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਪੁਰਾਤਨ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਰੇਅਰ ਨੇ.
ਅੱਛਾ. But it all goes back to the bladesmith and
the
craftsmanship.
ਹਾਂਜੀ. So let me tell you a funny story too. Like, you know how your ustad stabbed you with your kakar karpan and it bent? I think about a year and a half ago, I was wearing something similar to this pesh kabz over here, but it's actually called a shura. Shura.
So if I can ask a question, there's a pesh kabz, there's a kard, there's a chura, or churi bhi kehte hain, right? So these are all just different names of a knife?
Definitely. I mean, so the pesh kabj is more straighter and it has a T-spine. When you look deeper into this one, you'll be able to tell it has a ridge on the top of the spine.
Okay.
That's what it's made for, is strength, to be able to go through things, mainly to break chainmail. At the time, people wore chainmail, they wore body armor, and to rip that apart, we would use a pesh kabj. But let me tell you that story right now.
Yeah.
So I went for a kirtan program. My ustad ji had told me, hey, I want you on the side to do kirtan with me today. And I tagged along, and I won't say the asthan because I don't want to, it's local, but I don't want to say it, right?
Yeah.
So I wore a pesh kabz over my kurta pajama. I go and the jathedar of the place came and was like, Singha, teri karpan kithe hai? And I pointed at my pesh kabz, right? Baba ji, main pai hai. Nahi, tera kakar kithe hai?
ਹਾਂ.
ਬਾਬਾ ਵੀ ਮੈਂ ਹੀ ਪਾਇਆ ਹੈ.
ਘਰ ਹੀ ਹੈ ਇਹ.
ਮੈਂ ਤੇ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਾਰ ਦਿਖਾ ਹਨਾ. ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਚਲੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੱਸੋ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਦੀ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ. And he takes out his kirpan, what we call today the Taksali kirpan, right? And he's like, ਇੱਕ ਕਾਰ ਆ.
ਅੱਛਾ.
And I said, ਬਾਬਾ ਜੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨੇ ਕੇਲਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਵੱਢਣਾ. So main thing is ਵੀ ਕਕਾਰ ਉਹ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਰਤਿਆ ਜਾਏ.
Yeah.
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ. ਚਾਹੇ ਕਕਾਰ 3 ਫੁੱਟੀ ਹੋਏ, ਚਾਹੇ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕਬਜ਼ ਹੋਏ. In my opinion, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਕਟਾਰ ਹੀ ਹੋਏ. Even though that's not a traditional kakar shape.
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with wearing a katar as my kakar.
Yeah. I mean, I understand the concept behind it, but ਇੱਕ ਤਾਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਚਨ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਆ.
ਹਾਂਜੀ.
Right? ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ there's specific names, you know, for example, ਪੰਕਤੀ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਆ, ਅਸ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਖੰਡੋ ਖੜਗ ਤੁਪਕ ਤਬਾਰੀ ਆਰਤੀ, right?
ਸਾਹਿਬ ਸਰੋਹੀ ਸੈਥੀ ਇਹ
ਹਮਾਰੇ ਪੀਰ. Right? But we're not going to carry like a tupak, for example, on our... Right. It's not going to work out. Even a qatar, to some extent, the argument could be made that qatar jidi hai, because it is a different shastra. Right. Can it be counted as a...
Technically, let's say I agree. Let's say just for this situation, I'll agree with the people that say that the hilt and the blade should be entire one piece.
ਮੈਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਏਦਾਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਗਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ.
The qatar we have up there is entire one piece. technically that's a kakar then.
Yeah, it's one blade.
It's one blade
So
all
you
the way
got
through the hilt and through the blade.
Yeah.
It's one piece.
But the shape and the use of that weapon.
I mean, what is a kakar karpan gonna do? It's gonna stab. What's
Yeah.
a katar gonna do? It's gonna stab. So
Yeah.
I mean, as long as the use is there, then I think it can be counted as a kakar. Now I'm not talking for the entire Sikh Qawm.
Of course,
That's personally me.
ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੁਣ ਬਚਨ ਹੈਗੇ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਦੇ did ਮਹਾਰਾਜ specifically say ਵੀ ਇਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ or
Personally, I haven't came across that.
in any granth?
I haven't came across that. I might have not just have gotten to that yet, but I haven't came across that yet. I've seen if we go back, Baba Deep Singh Ji's kakar shastra was totally different than Maharaj's. I feel like that's what the Singhs preferred.
It was a personal choice.
Yeah, I mean,
what you wanted.
It's like, hey, are you gonna carry an AK-47 or an AR? That's preference.
Yeah, like what would you rather shoot? You know,
Both are semi-autos, right?
ਸਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ. Yeah,
But someone might prefer an AK over an AR,
yeah,
or someone might prefer a Glock over 38.
yeah. It's personal preference at the end of the day.
It's a personal
what you're
preference,
comfortable.
right? How do you feel tayar bar tayar?
Yeah,
Right?
That's
the way
what's
I
most
feel tayar bar
important.
tayar might not be the way you feel tayar bar tayar.
yeah, and the argument could be made that that's what Guru Sahib ultimately wanted, right? As long as you're tayar par tayar, that's what matters.
Exactly.
Nice. So do we know, I mean, obviously you have more extensive knowledge in like granths and stuff like that. Do you know of any, like, I guess, scriptures talking about the Shastras, Guru Sahib, or any prominent Sikhs war that were, I guess you could say, that stand out from today?
So we don't even have to go to the Granths for that. Let's just go into the lineage of the Khajana that's at Buddha Dal. There's a video where I believe it's at Thada Sahib in Samana, where I think Tarseem Singh Moral is there, and a couple other Singhs are there, and they're showcasing Pratan Itihasik Shastras,
Hanji.
right?
ਉਹ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨਾ ਹਰ ਸਾਲ
Hanji. Those Shastra look more like these Shastra than they look like what's made today. Right? So Maharaj's Gatre di Talwar was a triple fullered teg.
Triple?
Fullered. So a fuller is a khali line that goes through the blade. That has the purpose of helping with balance.
Oh, okay. I think Makati has one as well. Yeah.
Right.
There's
So,
like two.
so those are
ਦੋ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ, ਕਦੀ ਤਿੰਨ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ.
Hanji. Those are fullers.
So do you know why there's sometimes two, sometimes three?
There's different reasons to that. One reason could be that they're there to reduce the weight. Whereas 3 might reduce too much weight for that specific shastar, and instead they'll put 2.
Okay.
Or if they cut out 2 lines and it's still heavy, they'll cut out a 3rd one.
So it's like fine tuning it.
It's fine tuning it, right. Okay. So you might already have a blade, but once you need to fine tune it into a specific hilt, you would change some things.
Okay. Is there any more like deeper meaning behind like 2 versus 3?
There is some from what I've been told, and now I can't say this out of the book.
Yeah.
But
and this is just your personal opinion.
Yeah.
And
so I've heard that the double fullered blades represent Raj, and the triple fullered blades represent Bhakti.
Bhakti.
Hanji.
Miri te piri.
Miri te piri.
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ.
Right.
So obviously that's a big concept, you know, when we pick up these shastras that we have to have bhakti as well.
Right.
And it goes back to Guru Sahib, you know, like ultimately saying be like ਜੇ ਭਗਤੀ ਤੋਂ ਬਿਨਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ ਚੱਕਦੇ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜ਼ੁਲਮ ਕਰੋਗੇ, right? ਤੇ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਭਗਤੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਚੱਕਦੇ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੇ ਜ਼ੁਲਮ ਹੋਊਗਾ. Right? So there should be a proper balance.
Right. And sometimes I feel like that balance is a conglomerate, as in like some part of the qawm might just be pugs. Some part of the qawm might just be fighters.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
And that's natural.
Right? So we're there to protect our pugs. Those pugs are here to protect our fighters.
Yeah, but ultimately what Maharaj said to us is that we should, as Singhs, as Sikhs, be the perfect balance.
Balance, yes.
Sant te sipahi.
ਹਾਂਜੀ
ਦੋਨੋਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ.
ਜੀ ਤੇ ਮੇਨ ਗੱਲ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਤਲਵਾਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਾਈ ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਆਪਾਂ ਆਪ ਦੀ ਭਗਤੀ ਨੂੰ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਕਟ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ.
ਸਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ.
ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਜਣਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆ ਜਾਊਗਾ ਵੀ ਤੂੰ ਨਾਮ ਨਾ ਜਪ ਕੀ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ. ਜੇ ਤਲਵਾਰ ਨਾ ਹੋਊਗੀ ਤਾਂ ਕੀ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ.
Yeah.
Right?
ਸਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ.
That's just the concept of, hey, this is for safety. We need it. ਤੇ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੇ ਇੰਨੀ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਕੀਤੀ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਕਾਰ ਬਖਸ਼ਤਾ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਆ. ਇਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਕਰੂਗੀ.
ਸਹੀ
ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਬਣੀ ਆ ਜੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਹੈ.
ਕਿਰਪਾ ਕਰੂਗੀ. ਸਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ.
ਆਪਣੀ ਤੇ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਰੱਖੂਗੀ. Let me move on into some of the specific shastras that we have here. On top we have a peshkavas with the ivory hilt on it. When we look inside that blade, you'll see a watering on the blade. It's a pattern in there. ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਜੋਹਰ ਵੀ ਬੁਲਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ. ਜੋਹਰ. ਹਾਂ.
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਜੀ.
ਜੋਹਰ. ਤੇ that basically represents the authenticity of that shastar. That's the proof that this shastar is pratan.
ਅੱਛਾ.
Right? And then moving down, we have a Lahori teg. Now, why do I know it's Lahori teg? Why do I know it's from Lahore? It could easily have been from the pind over or like from a city nearby, right?
Yeah.
But ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੋਫਤਗਿਰੀ is the silver work that's on top of the hilt. It's in a specific pattern that we found a lot from Lahore.
Acha. So it's kind of like a trademark almost.
Trademark, yes. It's like a trademark. Sometimes you'll find stamps on blades. Those are also trademark.
So ਇੱਕ ਤਾਂ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ personal trademark ਜਿਵੇਂ ਨਾਮ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ, right?
Right.
And then there's also I guess like regional trademarks.
Right.
You know,
or like a bladesmith's trademark. Hey, I made this blade. I'm going to put a stamp on
it. Yeah, because it's art at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's
right?
art
And
at the
every
end.
artist wants to put their
Definitely.
name on their art.
Today it's art. At that time, it wasn't thought of as art.
Yeah.
It was mostly a weapon.
But it was still beautiful.
It was still
Even though
beautiful.
it was a weapon,
Yes.
it was still like they didn't make. No offense, how they're making shastras today.
No.
Right?
Yeah,
Like, even if they're gonna make a shastra, even if they're not gonna use it for its intended purpose, they still want to make it up to standards.
Up to standards, right. And I mean, even at that time, someone who is a warrior only might not have a shastra with gold on it or with silver on it. That doesn't mean that it's not going to work.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
You know?
Now, versus if you're a jarnail or if you're from a good family or if you're a raja, you might put some gold on that hilt.
Yeah, rubies and things like that.
Rubies and other, yeah. So another thing is that, which I find special, is that Apne Singh would personalize their karpana to themselves. Inside the hilt, right here, what we would call the knuckle guard or the tadi.
Tadi.
The tadi, when we hold the karpan, it would be right here on top of our knuckle, right? They would write their names in it, and in this fashion, Sri Akal Ji Sahai, and then they'd put the name.
Their own name.
Yeah.
Acha.
And I find that special because they really believe that this karpan is going to protect me. This is my protection. This is my Rabb, right?
Yeah.
Sri Akal Ji Sahai, Rabb di kirpa.
ਰੱਬ ਦਾ ਨਾਮ ਲੈ ਕੇ, yeah.
ਰੱਬ ਦਾ ਨਾਮ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਉਹਨੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਕਟ ਕਰਨਾ, and then they'd write their name.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful concept.
I found that very beautiful. And another cool thing is that Apne Singh are starting to collect those shastras back. There are some only a handful of Sri Akal Ji Sahais that are still existing in this world.
Yeah.
Luckily we have people like the Kanuja collection or the Kapani collection or like the Tur collection that are bringing back these shastra into Sikh hands.
Yeah. And those, I mean, they have a lot more than just shastras. They have like art and things like that.
Other artifacts as well.
We talked about in one of our previous podcasts with Sikh Scope. They were, they had shastras, they had art, but they had other things as well, other artifacts as well.
Right.
And from that same time era, from Maharaja Ranjit Singh's time era, Sher Punjab's time era.
We can find the Kalgi, we can find jewelry worn at that time. But the main thing that we find, what is special to me, is the shastra we find at the time.
Of course.
Right. Yeah. What shastra did Baba Jassa Singh Ahluwalia have? Right?
Yeah.
What shastra did Hari Singh Pangi have when they took Kasoor?
So do you have any shastras from that time era?
So these two talwars over here are from that time era. These are both from the Sikh Raj. It's hard to tell. I can't say with confidence that I know who owned them, but we know based off the geometry of the mutta, of the blade, of the pattern of silver and gold on it, that these are definitely from. Hanji, ਉਹਦਾ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਵੀ these match the other examples in different museums that belong to Sikhs.
Yeah.
Right.
ठीक है.
So sometimes we just have to use those as reference.
ठीक है.
Right.
ठीक है. But you're able to get like a pretty good match.
A good idea. Yeah. You can get a good idea and you can be confident, this is from this region around this time era.
So these two are from 1750s to 1800s.
I would say from that era, right.
Okay. Do you have anything from before that?
From before that is a little bit tougher to find, just due to aging. One might be aging, and I believe that jede apne not just Singhs, but imagine if we were alive during the 18th century and your dada left you a blade. Imagine, right?
Yeah.
Personally, what I would do is I'd get that remade into a hilt that I'm going to carry. Right? So you have your lineage and your gatra too.
Yeah. So you could have the blade and the mutta. So obviously there's mutta that have multiple blades on them, right? You get them repaired. You get them
repaired, right? Yeah.
So would you rather keep a blade or would you rather keep the mutta? What is more, I guess, like passed down? What is more looked at as like the
mutta?
Yeah.
Personally, I mean, it's beautiful when the piece is complete.
Of course.
Right? ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬੁਲਾ ਦੀਦਾ ਜਾਤਬੰਦ. ਜਾਤਬੰਦ means that it's an original marriage. ਵੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਆ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਬਣਿਆ ਸੀ ਉਹੀ ਮੁੱਠਾ ਆ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਦਣ ਦਾ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਸੀ. But it's harder to find those.
Yeah.
Even sometimes things or other dealers and collectors will call something jatband,
ਜਾਤ ਬੰਦ
ਬੰਦ ਵੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ origignal marriage ਹੈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਹੀ ਬਣੇ ਸੀ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਹੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਉਦੋਂ ਦੇ ਇਦਾਂ ਹੀ
ਇਕੱਠੇ ਹੀ ਹੈ
ਹਾਂਜੀ
ਠੀਕ
those are much more rare
so is there a name for ਤਲਵਾਰਾਂ that are ਵਿਛੋੜਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ
No, I mean, you would just say that it's been switched off.
Okay. Like rebuilt or repaired.
Yeah. And that was more common than thought so because after battle, you would always have hilts that needed repair. And if that repair was too extensive, they just changed the hilt.
Yeah. The blades are obviously Puratan, right?
Right.
The mutte, we could find mutte that are more Puratan maybe? Like it's more a possibility that
we've seen recycled mutte come back more often.
Into Puratan Shastras. So Puratan
and even new Shastras. I was talking to Gyani Sher Singh ji one time and I was like, ਵੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪੁਰਾਤਨ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਹੀ ਪਸੰਦ ਹੈ ਹਨਾ and he's like ਵੀ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ ਬਲੇਡ ਤਾਂ ਬਣ ਜੂਗੀ ਪਰ ਮੁੱਠੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਤਿਆਰ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਬਲੇਡ ਤਾਂ ਬਣ ਜੂਗੀ we'll find someone that can make a good blade right that'll be just as strong and just as nice as a Puratan one but we can't find anyone to make mutte yet
mutte is like so that's the harder obviously
that's harder to find so even right now like I have a project like that we started along with a couple other things that we do at Akali Armory. We like to provide shastar for people that are looking for shastar, right? And the hardest thing to find is mutte. Good mutte.
Yeah.
Even so when I ordered my talwar for my wedding, my Ananda Karaj piece, I didn't like the blade in it, and I had a blade waiting at home for a gold handle, for a gold hilt. I got lucky that I didn't like the blade in the one that I bought, so I switched it off immediately. ਉਹਦਾ ਬੈਲੈਂਸ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਕੁਦਰਤੀ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੇ ਇੰਨਾ ਤਗੜਾ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਸੋ I don't ever find it bad to switch it off as long as it's a good switch.
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ but ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੁੱਠਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਮੁੱਠਾ is supposed to be tight. It's supposed to ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੁਣ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਹੈ I've heard ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ 6ਵੇਂ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਸੀਗੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੁੱਠਾ ਫੜਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਨਾ ਤਾਂ ਜੰਗ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਜਦੋਂ ਖੋਲਣਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਤੇਲ ਲਾ ਕੇ ਮੁੱਠਾ
ਖੋਲਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ
right so that's how tight the grip used to be.
ਇਹਦੇ we can look at it two ways. Either the hand swells up so much from use that it fills the entire mutta or it's a tight fit. I think that comes back to preference and the way you fight. If you fight with a looser hand, you might like a looser mutta.
Of course.
Right? And maybe you're not going for straight chop vars. You're just going to touch. Right? ਵੀ ਬਸ ਫੱਟ ਲਾਉਣਾ
ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਟੈਕਨੀਕ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ
ਫੱਟੜ ਬੰਦੇ ਮਰੇ ਵਰਗਾ
right ਸਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ
if you're on ਘੋੜਸਵਾਰ you might not want to chop someone you just want to cut their arm right so for something like that you might want a looser mutta so you have more usage of your wrist and your elbow right ਜਦੋਂ ਮੁੱਠਾ ਟਾਈਟ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਆ the var changes too you can't follow through completely
ਘੁੰਮਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ
ਉਹਨਾਂ ਪਰ ਫਿਰ ਉਹ ਵਾਰ ਵੀ ਉਦਾਂ ਕਰਨੇ ਪੈਂਦੇ ਆ so the mutta definitely dictates the style of fighting but if you were selecting a talwar back in the day then you would say hey I prefer a looser mutta and they'd make it a little bit more open.
But we tend to see a lot of tight mutte. Jede like AV we like I held a couple of these and they're really tight.
Right. So the ones that we see over here that are from Punjab specifically are looser.
Acha.
That's something to take in note. So if we look at the average height across the country of India right now, people are taller in Punjab. People are larger in Punjab. Right? The more south we go, the body composition is smaller.
Of course,
right? So their hands were a bit tighter. They were smaller, and for that they needed tighter mutte.
But in terms of like, I guess you could say Persian shastras, those were a bit tighter?
That varies as well.
Of course it varies, but like the mainstream we would see.
Like, even so, ਜਿਹੜਾ mainstream ਮਤਲਬ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨਿਕਲਦਾ ਸੀ out of Persia, it had a pistol grip. It didn't have this Indian style mutta.
Acha.
So I don't have one with me today, just because I prefer these. So I don't collect many pistol grips. But those ones, they'll come out literally looking like a pistol grip, and it's not made like a regular Indian.
And we can see that with scimitars and things like that.
Hanji, there you go. Yeah. So most shamshirs out of the Persian subcontinent will have a pistol grip, and then it's common to find Persian blades on Indian hilts. Like ਜਦੋਂ 6ਵੇਂ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਨੇ ਦੋਨੇ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਸਾਹਿਬਾਂ ਮੰਗਵਾਈਆਂ ਸੀ they came from Iran.
ਅੱਛਾ ਉਹ ਕਿਹਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਨਾ ਵੀ ਇਰਾਨ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਹੈਗੇ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵਧੀਆ ਮੰਨੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ
Irani Falad is one of the best. ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ like when as collectors and as dealers we look at shastar and we look for the johar or we look for the pattern in the blade we can tell specifically ਵੀ ਹਾਂ ਇਹ Irani Falad ਆ that automatically knocks the price up.
ਸਹੀ ਗੱਲ
right. So the woots that existed in India was known as Indian crystalline woots.
Indian crystalline woods.
Right. That's what the museums call it today. But what was from Iran was obviously called Irani Falad. And the difference at the price in 18th century, Falad in India could be bought for like 40 rupees. Well, actually between 10 and 40 rupees.
ਉਸ ਸਮੇਂ 'ਚ
ਉਹ ਸਮੇਂ 'ਚ ਤੇ at the same time in Iran it would be upwards of 80 rupees and all the way up to 400 rupees.
So there's a lot of, like, I guess you could say, different currency exchanges, different types of values based on metals, precious metals,
Definitely.
right? And obviously the same metals that were used in coins and stuff. I mean, they're not obviously used in the Shastras as well, but Canada Pave, precious metals were seen as like that was what the currency was based off of, right?
Definitely, like Falad itself is really deeply rooted in like different indigenous people of the Asian subcontinent. Like Falad was around the Persian subcontinent and in Bharat, right? Falad meant a lot of like so I read this Persian text a while ago and they said Falad reminds us of the water that we'll be able to drink once we're in ਜਦੋਂ ਜੰਨਤ ਮਿਲੂਗੀ ਤੇ ਪਾਣੀ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹਾ ਮਿਲੂਗਾ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਦਾ ਫਲਾਦ ਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ.
ਅੱਛਾ.
So these terms are really deeply rooted into
So there's like more philosophical meanings behind
definitely
metals and stuff.
Definitely.
Nice. Now, were these like obviously these metals were traded along with currencies as well, right?
So we can find a lot of Persian metals in South India. We can find Indian woots in the Persian subcontinent.
Yeah.
We can find woots on Angrez officers' blades.
Yeah.
Even they liked woots. ਜਦੋਂ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ ਆਏ ਆ they sometimes preferred woots because of they were aesthetically pleasing and they wanted something from that original place, and they would put a woots blade in their personal piece.
The British officers would do this?
Yeah.
So they valued our metals more than their own.
Yeah, and we valued theirs or sometimes more than ours.
Sometimes more than ours.
It's
not
like
all the
saying
time,
like what you don't have you value more,
yeah,
right?
of course. Yeah. But Canada Pave abhi jidi matlab whoever had the more takda metal, I guess you could say, odi jutti jaldi si.
Definitely. Right? Like ਸਰਦਾਰੀ ਚੱਲੀ ਤਲਵਾਰ ਨਾਲ ਆ. ਜੇ ਰਣਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦਾ ਰਾਜ ਸੀ, ਮਹਾਰਾਜਾ ਰਣਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦਾ ਰਾਜ ਸੀ, ਉਹਦੀ ਤੇਗ ਕਰਕੇ ਸੀ.
Yeah. ਤੇ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਹੁਣ ਦੀ ਕਰੰਸੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਤਗੜੀ ਸੀ.
ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਤੋਂ ਤਗੜੀ ਸੀ ਉਸ ਸਮੇਂ. ਆਪਣਾ ਇੱਕ ਸਿੱਖ ਸਿੱਕਾ ਉਦੋਂ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ I think it was 20 British pounds at the time.
ਅੱਛਾ.
That's what it was worth. It might even be a bit higher, but around that. It was around that value.
ਤਗੜਾ, like the metal itself was just so precious, like the coins that you use. It's not ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪੇਪਰ ਦੀ ਕਰੰਸੀ ਦੇਖਣ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਆ. It was either precious metals or it was actual gold or some type of coins like that, right?
Even at that time, like if we talk about like cannons at the time, we were much more advanced in those two.
Achha. Like as far as like weaponry?
That's why the Angrez would send over people to study it in Lahore. ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ ਆਈਲੈਟਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ ਉਦੋਂ ਲਾਹੌਰ ਦਾ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ
ਲਾਹੌਰ ਦਾ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸੀ
ਹਾਂਜੀ
ਸਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਹੁਣ ਵੀ ਲੱਗਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ
ਹੁਣ ਵੀ ਲੱਗਿਆ
ਕਰੂਗਾ you know because ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਧਰਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ it still ultimately has these
ਸੂਰਬੀਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਧਰਤੀ ਆ
but ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਮਾਂ ਧਰਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ it still has those elements there
definitely
you know just because we as people don't have the craftsmanship to take advantage of that.
Hanji.
So we could still find these metals, skilla, woods, all these things. Like you source them from Tarti to aapa lende ha.
Tarti to lende. Bas. Definitely. And you know, there are craftsmen out there that have refound how to make woods. Seje. It'll find its way into the Sikh community.
Yeah.
There are some people in the Sikh community that do make it.
I'm sure there's a growing market for your type of.
Definitely.
Right.
Definitely. Like I'm already thinking of getting a new blade made in new woods. It'll cost me just as much as an antique will, but you have to be willing to pay for a good shastar.
Yeah.
ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ ਟੈਸਲਾ ਤੇ ਤਾਂ 1.5 ਲੱਖ ਲਾ ਦਾਂਗੇ, G-Wagon ਵੀ ਚੱਕ ਲਾਂਗੇ, ਪਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿਰਪਾਨ ਲੈਣੀ ਤਾਂ ਬਸ $10-15 ਦੀ
$50 ਦੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ ਬਸ.
ਇਹਨੂੰ ਪੀਰ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਨੇ G-Wagon ਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੀਰ ਬੁਲਾਇਆ, ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ ਨੂੰ ਪੀਰ ਬੁਲਾਇਆ.
ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ ਪੀਰ ਆ ਸਾਡੇ. ਸਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ. But yeah, so I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get to is ultimately the metals, where they're coming from, right? ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਸਕੇਲਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਬੂਟਸ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਇਟਸ ਕਮਿੰਗ ਫਰਮ ਦ ਰੀਜਨ ਆਫ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਕਰੈਕਟ
ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁਣ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਰੇ ਕਿਤੇ ਮਿਲ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ ਇਟਸ ਜਸਟ ਬੇਸਡ ਔਨ ਲਾਈਕ ਹਾਊ ਆਰ ਵੀ ਗੋਇੰਗ ਟੂ ਯੂਜ਼ ਦੈਟ ਮੈਟਲ
ਯਾ
ਜੋ ਲੋਹੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਮਿਲ ਜਾਣਾ ਇੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਸਕੇਲਾ ਬਣੀ ਜਾਊਗਾ ਇੱਥੇ ਵੀ
ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣਤਾ ਜਾਊਗਾ ਬਟ ਇਫ ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਹੀਏ ਵੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਲੋਹਾ ਨਿਕਲਦਾ
ਹਾਂਜੀ
ਰਾਈਟ ਹੁਣ ਫੋਰ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲ ਸਪਰਿੰਗ ਸਟੀਲ ਕਿਹਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਇਟ ਵਾਸ ਲਾਈਕ ਐਸ ਫਾਰ ਐਸ ਆਈ ਨੋ ਆਈ ਕੁਡ ਬੀ ਰੋਂਗ ਇਟ ਕੇਮ ਫਰਮ ਲਾਈਕ ਯੂਜ਼ਡ ਕਾਰ ਪਾਰਟਸ ਐਂਡ ਟਰੱਕ ਪਾਰਟਸ ਫਰਮ ਯੂਰਪ
at the
time, correct?
Right.
Obviously, we could get that metal elsewhere.
We can even do that today.
It was sourced from there, right?
Right.
The ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੁਣ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਲੀਗ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, where were they sourcing their metals from?
At that time, so I mean, we have to move on into the Sikh League guys. Where were they getting it from? Right? It wasn't. If you're a Raja or if you're a fighter, you're not really worried about where am I going to get my metal from.
Of course, yeah.
You're going straight to the Sikh League guys.
You're going to the shop.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, over there, ਉੱਥੇ ਮੈਂ ਇਦਾਂ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਸੀ ਵੀ ਉਸ ਟਾਈਮ 'ਚ ਕਿਲੇ ਭਰੇ ਪਏ ਸੀ ਕੰਧਾਂ ਕਿਲੇ ਭਰੇ ਪਏ ਸੀ ਸਿਰਫ ਫਲਾਦ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਫਲਾਦ ਤੋਂ ਸਹਿਜੇ ਪੀਸ ਕੱਢ ਕੇ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਬਣਾ ਦੇਣਾ
ਪਰ ਉਹ ਆਇਆ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਹੈ ਫਲਾਦ ਇਹਨਾਂ
ਇਹਦਾ ਰੱਬ ਜਾਣੇ ਫਿਰ ਇਟਸ ਅ ਮਿਸਟਰੀ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਫਲਾਦ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਪੁਰਾਣੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਆ ਫਲਾਦ goes much further back than even the 13th century.
You're not going to see in any like normal household items today, right?
Definitely not.
Or anywhere in the market today.
Definitely not.
It's just going to be in a Pratan Shastra, correct?
It'll be in a Pratan Shastra, or if someone's really good at making it.
Yeah.
Right? So even when we make it, there's a process that goes into it where you have to cook it in a specific way.
Yeah. Bake karna ਪੈਂਦਾ
ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਤਲਬ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੇ ਤੱਤ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਉਨੀ ਕੁ ਹਵਾ ਪਊਗੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕੁ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਾਰਬਨ ਪਾਉਣਾ ਆ the carbon content is very important in making woots. But that would be someone who's more into metallurgy.
Yeah. ਠੀਕ ਹੈ like blacksmiths and things like that they would know more about that.
Right.
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੇ time ਤੇ did they obviously we had blacksmiths and these type of metallurgists like that, right? And do you know about any, I guess you could say, Guru Sahib giving preference to these people or like ਹੁਣ ਜਿਵੇਂ for example ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਹੈ, right? We know ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ 22 ਮੰਜੀਆਂ ਸੀਗੀਆਂ ਮੰਜੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ for example ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਸੰਗੀਤ ਦੀ ਸੀਗੀ and there was a whole, I guess you could say, field or industry that Maharaj he put people in charge of it, right? So was there a whole, obviously there had to be a field of warfare and armory and things like that, right?
So when Sheme Pasha got Gurgaddi, they said we sanu maya na deo hun ਘੋੜੇ ਜਾਂ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਤੇ ਸਿੰਘ one of those was shastar we sanu shastar chahiye
ਤੇ ਸਿੰਘ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ
that attracted a lot of Sikh leaguers and a lot of craftsmen to come over that we want to make shastar for the Guru and for the Guru ਦੀਆਂ ਫੌਜਾਂ because it's going to be used for the right thing too.
So are there any prominent blacksmiths or Sikh leaguers you know?
Ajkal it's hard to find them.
No, in Pratan, like from Guru Sahib's time, like je koi naam hove kise da, somebody you know was like eh banda jehda hai or like his lineage ਮੰਨਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਮਤਲਬ you know.
So that's the thing, when we lost our history due to losing our Raj, that went with it.
Acha. Just
like we lost a lot of compositions in Kirtan, we lost a lot of art in the Shastra as well.
Yeah, like craftsmanship and things like that.
Yes, a lot of it.
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ
That's why you know we're still finding our way back to making them again.
ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਪਤਾ ਕਰੀਏ ਵੀ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ like what areas were prominent for this.
Right, but my belief is this, ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ DNA 'ਚ ਆ
ਨਹੀਂ ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਹੈ ਸਾਡੇ ਖੂਨ 'ਚ ਆ
ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਤਾਂ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦਾ DNA ਵੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਵੀ ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਜੇ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਆਪਣੇ ਕੋਲ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਆ like we said before, like the wand finds the wizard. Right? Shastar finds the owner. Right? Just like that, it's in the DNA. We never know. Maybe I was alive back then and I owned one of these pieces and it just came back. These have been around since the 18th century.
Keep that, you know, like there's so many like alternate universes, you know.
Definitely.
We're not going to get into the philosophical stuff of that. But definitely, because again, these Jide Shastra, they've been here since before us and they're going to be here.
They're going to be here long after us, as long as they're taken care of well.
Exactly. I mean, even if they're not, if this type of stuff, it's going to ultimately, it's metal.
It's metal.
Right?
It'll last
It's a natural resource. Right? So jada matlab Shastra, this is one thing that no matter what, like you could say, you could get a bow and arrow, you could get a gun. You're going to run out of bullets, you're going to run out of teeth, right? But jada Shastra, this is until it's either going to break on you.
Good to go, it's reloaded. It's good enough for a couple more battles.
Sahi ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੁੱਕਦੀ.
Another thing I wanted to bring up, kard. Everyone has a kard in the kitchen. That came from the Shastra's name.
Acha. Kard, because
it didn't come from the kitchen into the kamar kasa. It started from kard being a shastar,
and then it went into the kitchen.
And then it's like, oh, ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਤਾਂ ਸੇਵ ਕੱਟਣਾ ਵੀ
ਸਬਜ਼ੀਆਂ ਵੀ ਕੱਟ ਸਕਦੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ.
Right.
ਸਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ.
That's something to note.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, because we could say that, you know, even kitchen knives are,
Yeah,
they're dangerous, right?
definitely.
They're shastras
Definitely.
at the end of the day. If you have nothing else but you got a butter knife, you know, you could still do some damage with that.
You could do something.
You could defend yourself. You could
Yeah.
defend someone else.
It's better than not having something.
Exactly.
Right.
But ultimately, the concept is there. You know, as long as you have, I guess you could say, the discipline and the techniques. If you
Right.
practice with a shastra like this,
If you have the vidya, you can make use of it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
yeah.
But it's just easier to use something that's meant
Of course,
for it.
of course. So, I mean, one of the last things I want to ask you is, I myself have bought shastras. I haven't bought any Pratan shastra, I think. I don't know. But there's always an issue with shipping them over India, right? India to aapa mangaunde, Punjab to aapa mangaunde, or Rajasthan, or anywhere we get them, right? They always say, is it cheaper? I mean, as far as I know, it's cheaper to buy. The more you buy, the cheaper it gets.
Right.
Correct.
Quantity.
Obviously, if you're buying one specific shastra, it's going to be really, really expensive. Not only is the shastra itself going to be expensive, but shipping it over, bringing it over. So, you as an expert in shastra markets, what would you say? What is your advice, I guess, to someone who's getting into shastra, someone who wants to buy, whether it's a bulk order, whether it's just some like a collector's item?
Personally,
How would you go about that?
I would recommend, if you're getting into shastra collecting, focus on the quality. ਵੀ ਚਾਹੇ ਇੱਕ ਤੇਗ ਹੋਏ, ਚਾਹੇ ਇੱਕ ਹੀ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਹੋਏ, ਚੰਗਾ ਹੋਏ, ਹਨਾ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਨਵਾਂ ਚਾਹੇ ਪੁਰਾਣਾ, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਚੰਗਾ ਹੋਏ, ਉਹ ਵਰਤਿਆ ਵੀ ਜਾਏ, ਜਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛ ਕੇ ਲਵੋ, ਜਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛ ਲਓ. We're at Akali Armory. You can ask us anytime.
Yeah, shout out Akali Armory. Follow them on Instagram.
Thank you.
Everywhere else.
ਜਦੋਂ ਮਰਜੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛ ਲਓ. And we handle the shipping too, first of all, right? The beautiful thing is that we get our shastras from all around the globe. They're not mainly from India. They're not mainly from here. We get them all across the globe. And we handle the part like, hey, you can trust us as far as you're going to get a good piece.
It'll be authentic.
It'll be authentic and it's not going to break. We were at this Vyao a while back, and the Singh was, I think it was someone in the Bay Area, and they were spinning a talwar. While spinning, it cracked in half. It was a Pratan Shastar. It was a Pratan Shastar.
Pratan or Pratan?
No, it was definitely Pratan.
Okay.
Hagi vi Falad disi. The issue comes up that some dealers don't know how to correctly take care of shastar. They'll over dip it in an acid.
Yeah. ਇਹ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਬੜੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ. ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਪੁਰਾਤਨ ਖਜ਼ਾਨੇ ਵੀ ਹੈਗੇ ਨਾ, ਉਹ ਚ ਵੀ like I think there's a lot of damage being done to our.
I've heard, I don't even want to blame anyone, but I've heard some of our khajana is being cleaned by grinders.
Grinders, like, isn't that just gonna scrape the metal away?
It literally takes it takes the metal away. All they care about is the shine, right? Right. Recently, I had a conversation with someone about how the restoration process isn't really up to par.
ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਾਰ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਉਹ.
It's not up to par. Technically, ਜੇ piece pratan ਹੈਗਾ ਆ, it should be able to last its life. It should be able to last long enough. Yeah. We should know how to not just restore, but how to preserve, right? But okay, let's go back into like people getting into shastra collecting. Focus on quality. ਤੇ ਸਹਿਜੇ ਲਵੋ. ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਆ ਜਾਊਗਾ. When it's the right time, the shastra will find its way to you. Yeah. And let it come to you. ਤੇ ਜਦੋਂ I ask questions, ask around, ask other collectors, ask me, reach out to me at Akali Armory. We'll help out. Hey, your shastra is this, it's this. Yeah.
At least know what you're buying.
And we'll be honest with you. We'll be honest with you. Like, hey, it's probably a new one instead of a Pratan one. It might not be the best piece, and maybe you overpaid or maybe you underpaid. Maybe you got a good deal. We'll be very honest with it. But if you're going to get into collecting, get serious about it, right? Je Maharaj ne ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਪੀਰ ਆ, that ਪੀਰ is going to come to us, right? ਉਹ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਮਰਜੀ ਆ ਜੇ. ਕਈ ਮਹਾਂਪੁਰਖ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਜੇ ਮੰਗੋਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਆ ਜਾਊਗਾ, ਜੇ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਕਰੋਗੇ ਆ ਜਾਊਗਾ. ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਵੱਡੇ ਮਹਾਂਪੁਰਖਾਂ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਕਿਹਾ ਆ, ਬਹੁਤਿਆਂ ਨੇ, ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਜੇ ਜਾਣ ਦੇ ਕੇ ਵੀ ਮਿਲ ਜੇ ਨਾ, ਸਸਤਾ ਆ. ਸਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ. ਘੱਟੋ ਘੱਟ ਘਰੇ ਤਾਂ ਆ ਜਾਊਗਾ, right? So think of shastar as something very special, something very precious, and they'll make their way to you. Yeah.
So ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ like for I guess a collection. But what if you're just like a normal person trying to buy one, maybe two items, right? How do you know ਵੀ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਹੈਗਾ, it hasn't been abused, it hasn't been cleaned harshly, you know, it's not like it will last its life? So
we always we get a lot of people that hit us up on Akali Armory. It's not to buy from us, but they're asking questions about their shastar, and we're completely honest. we'll let you know, hey, this has probably been cleaned by a grinder and the geometry of the blade isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
And once you use it, there's a risk of cracking it.
So are there like specific signs you look for specifically?
Yeah, you can. So when you look into a shastar, you can find grinding marks if it's been grinded. A shastar should not have grinding lines going through it. It should instead have, if it's Puratan, it should instead have johar, like the pattern that we talked about.
Yeah.
Or it should have a really nice polish. It should have a mirror polish.
ਜਿਹੜਾ ਜੋਹਰ ਹੈਗਾ, is it just on the surface or is it ਅੰਦਰ ਵੀ ਹੈਗਾ?
No, ਉਹ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਆ। ਉਹ ਅਸਲ 'ਚ ਅੰਦਰ ਆ।
ਸੋ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਜੇ ਗ੍ਰਾਈਂਡ ਕਰ ਵੀ ਲਓ ਤਾਂ ਥੱਲੇ
ਜੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਗ੍ਰਾਈਂਡ ਕਰ ਲਓ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਪਾਲਿਸ਼ ਕਰੋਗੇ ਉਹਨੇ ਫਿਰ ਉੱਪਰ ਆ ਜਾਣਾ। ਹਾਂਜੀ।
ਅੱਛਾ।
A nice way to tell authenticity again is ਜੇ ਚੀਜ਼ ਫੌਲਾਦ ਦੀ ਲੱਗਦੀ and you can see the pattern, take sandpaper. Don't take rough sandpaper.
400 ਗ੍ਰਿਟ ਦਾ ਜਾਂ
ਨਹੀਂ, ਇਹ ਤੋਂ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਵੱਧ ਕਰ ਲਿਓ। Go to 800, 1200. ਉਹਨੂੰ ਹਟਾ ਦਿਓ। As you rub that sandpaper on it, the johar will remove itself. After that, what you can do is you can rub your angutha on it, and it'll heat up the blade. If you can still see it under there, authentic. That pattern is authentic.
ਮਤਲਬ ਜੇ ਫਾਰਨ, if you could feel it.
ਹਾਂਜੀ। No, not as in feel it. Your thumb will heat the blade, and that heat will expose the friction, the pattern again. Right. Right. I wouldn't say use an acid because unless you're a chemist or unless you know what you're doing, I wouldn't want you to hurt your shastar.
But even acid is just, what's the need for acid?
So, I mean, there's different acids that people use to etch a shastar. Those acids basically bring out the pattern at a much vibrant rate versus if you just polish it with the sandpaper and you put polishing material on it.
Yeah.
It won't really show the pattern, but once you put that acid on it, it'll expose the different composition in the steel.
But ਇਹਦਾ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗ ਜਾਂਦਾ,
ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗ ਜਾਂਦਾ, ਹਾਂ, ਸ਼ਰੇਆਮ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗ ਜਾਂਦਾ।
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ। If something's like acid cleaned and stuff,
you can definitely tell.
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ।
There's, I mean, honestly, we find so many shastar that are acid damaged too.
Probably a lot, like the ones in the khajana we talked about.
Hanji. And those blades have been grinded down, re-etched with acid, grinded down 5 years later, re-etched with acid, and that cycle is just taking so much age away from them. Sometimes, I mean, we see apna khajana, Maharaja Ranjit Singh's khajana is in a couple museums in all across Europe, right? And or if we look at the other side, there's Aurangzeb's talwar in the Met Museum or the Wallace, and those are so properly taken care of, they might even last 1,000 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you're going to buy Puratan, make sure you either you ask around or you know, like, hey, I want to preserve this piece.
Yeah, unless you're going to be using it for
and if you're going to be using it, maybe you don't want falad, get sakela or get a new piece, but make sure it's coming from the right craftsman, from the right sikligar, from the right swordsmith.
So that's like is there anything else like you would recommend?
I mean,
as far as
main ਗੱਲ ਇਹ ਆ ਵੀ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸ਼ਸਤਰ ਰੱਖਣਾ ਨਾ ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਵਰਤਣਾ ਸਿੱਖੋ।
ਵਰਤਣਾ ਵੀ ਸਿੱਖੋ।
ਹਾਂ, especially, I mean, we're lucky we have quite a bit of gatke akhade.
Yeah.
So we have that vidya here. But focus on finding some type of vidya that you can learn.
Yeah.
That involves these weaponry, right? Mostly gatke akhade will teach that, and that'll help you decide on what type of blade you need.
Yeah.
What type of shastra you need for
because
yourself.
Ultimately, the blade and the shastra you choose is going to affect your fighting style.
Yeah, like until you go to the range and shoot a weapon, you don't know if it's for you.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
You don't know. I mean, you could go buy a Glock or you could go buy anything you want. You won't know if it's yours unless you've practiced with it.
Yeah, and you shoot firearms all the time, and you there's certain preferences you have. You like the way this one shoots. 100%. You like the way this one feels. Same thing.
You might like the weight of a Beretta over a Glock.
Exactly. And these shastras are the same exact way.
Same exact way.
So I have one last question I wanted to get out regarding the hilt.
Right.
There's different names for the types of hilt. There's Suryavanshi, I've heard. There's different types of that. So could you shed some light on that?
So Suryavanshi, that was kind of a marketing technique in the recent couple of years.
Achha.
Most of the Suryavanshi hilts that are considered, or what we call today Suryavanshi, or the general market does, those are actually Karnashahi mutte.
Karnashahi mutte.
Hanji.
Okay.
Those are totally different than what Suryavanshis are.
So could you explain that concept a little bit?
So the Karnashahi mutta actually has like a type of sunburst pattern behind the pommel. ਇਹਨੂੰ ਆਪਾਂ pommel ਬੁਲਾਵਾਂਗੇ। ਇਹਦੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਫੁੱਲ ਆ।
ਅੱਛਾ
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ।
ਹਾਂ ਸੂਰਜ ਜਿਹਾ ਬਣਿਆ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਨਾ ਇੱਕ
ਉਹਦੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਸੂਰਜ ਬਣਿਆ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆਮ ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹ ਨਾ ਇਦਾਂ ਰੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਨੂੰ ਲਾਈਨਾਂ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ, ਉਹ ਸੂਰਜ ਵਾਂਗੂ ਲੱਗਦੀਆਂ ਤੇ
ਤਿੱਖੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਨਾ,
ਤਿੱਖੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ, ਦੋਜ਼ ਆਰ ਕਰਨਸ਼ਾਈ ਮੁੱਠੇ।
ਅੱਛਾ,
ਸੋ ਸੂਰਜਵੰਸ਼ੀ ਮੁੱਠੇ ਆਰ ਵੈਰੀ ਰੇਅਰ, those are actually much harder to find. It'll actually look like a sun.
ਅੱਛਾ, and it comes from the Suryavansh clan, right?
They do link it back to that.
Okay, and they had like, I guess that could be their trademark, you could say, right?
Right.
And are there different ones?
There's a bunch of different ones. Like just like we like the saying started Sri Akal Ji Sahai at a certain time, like the pommel shape was something different for other like let's say some certain missile or some group of people might have a totally different pommel disc, or it would have a different grip.
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ।
Yeah, ਪਰ ਹੁਣ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਵਿਚਕਾਰ ਲਈ ਆ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਪਤਾ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਮੁੱਠਾ ਆ। How do we know that? The shape of this right here. ਆ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਰਵ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ, that tells us that this is a ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਮੁੱਠਾ।
ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਹੈ।
ਹਾਂ
ਠੀਕ ਹੈ, ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹ ਹੈ,
ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨੀ ਇਹ ਆ। And then this one we can tell it's a ਸਿੰਧੀ ਮੁੱਠਾ।
ਸਿੰਧੀ, ਅੱਛਾ ਸਿੰਧ ਦੀ।
ਇਹ ਸਿੰਧ ਦੀ ਆ, ਇਹ ਇਹਦੇ ਪਿੱਛੋਂ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗ ਜਾਂਦਾ, ਤੇ ਇਹਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਗ੍ਰਿਪ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਮੋਟਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ।
ਅੱਛਾ, ਤੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਫਿਰ ਚਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਲਾਈਕ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਟੋਟਲੀ ਵੱਖਰੇ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ। ਲਾਈਕ ਆਈ ਸੈਡ, ਆਈ ਫੀਲ ਲਾਈਕ that was influenced by the people of that area. ਜੇ ਸਿੰਘ ਥੋੜੇ ਜਿਹੇ ਭਾਰੇ ਸੀ, ਥੋੜੇ ਜਿਹੇ ਤਗੜੇ ਸੀ, ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਉਹ ਮੁੱਠੇ ਵੀ ਖੁੱਲੇ ਆ।
Yeah. So you like even minimal like differences affect the entire, I guess, shastra.
Definitely.
The mutta you want, how big you want it. And so ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬੰਦਾ, let's say someone like me, if I want to buy one, right? I'm going to get it custom made. How would you go about saying that I want it bigger, I want it smaller, mutta ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ?
So it's hard to tell off pictures. Like most people will buy a piece off of a picture, right? I would say try to go for something that you can hold in person.
Yeah.
Right? And
if you can't, but if I could say ਵੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਆ ਸਿੰਧ ਦਾ ਪਸੰਦ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਲਾਹੌਰ ਦਾ ਪਸੰਦ ਹੈ ਮੈਨੂੰ,
so ਜਿਹੜੇ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ, I'll just say it out there, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਆ, because you're Punjabi, most likely the Punjabi mutta will be best for you.
Of course, natural ji ਗੱਲ ਹੈ।
Most likely, it's just natural.
Yeah.
Right? I've had shastras from South India, and those aren't comfortable to me.
Just because of like
just
body
because,
features.
Yeah. Our DNA is from Punjab.
Of course, yeah. I mean, our hands, everything.
Therefore, the Punjabi mutta is probably the best fit for us.
Yeah.
Even when I get newer shastras made, I get them made in a fashion that we would find most likely coming out of Punjab.
Yeah. So, I mean, it goes, I guess you could say the shastras, they change along with the dimorphism of the people in the region.
That's my belief right there.
So, samapt kariye ਆਪਾਂ, we had a lot of extensive knowledge given to us, a lot of things to question. We're grateful for it. We're glad we could look into this. They like, comment, follow, share, subscribe. Akali Armory and Khulle Vichar.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
It was really special.
We would love to have you again.
Oh man,
we could do a part
it was really fun talking with you.
Bring some different shastras and talk about them.
And I like what you guys got going on here, man.
Thank you, man.
I'm excited to see you guys grow.
Thank you, brother. ठीक है, ਆਪਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਸਮਾਪਤ ਕਰੀਏ। This is Jaskaran Singh from Akali Armory. ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।